everyone. Today we're gonna be talking about the Black Plague versus the coronavirus COVID-19.
The Black Plague started spreading in Europe October 1346. The origin of the plague came from black rats carrying flies in Asia, and it traveled to Europe by boats from trading.
The Black Death have killed 50 million people in the 14th century, or 16% of Europe's entire population.
The bubonic plague is believed to have originated in China and made its way to Europe by means of trading ships heavily contaminated by flea-infested rats carrying the disease bacteria.
Ships should have been quarantined, as was done recently with the Grand Princess cruise ship, or at least turned away, but they weren't, and the plague was introduced into the continent, where they docked at Italy.
Let's start off by knowing first that the Black Plague is a serious bacterial infection that can be deadly, sometimes referred to as the Black Plague. The disease is caused by a bacterial strain called Yersinia pestis. This bacterium is found in animals throughout the world and is usually transmitted to humans through flies.
While the new coronavirus is a respiratory virus which spreads primarily through droplets generated when an infected person coughs or sneezes, or through droplets of saliva or discharge from the nose.
The COVID-19 started the spread of virus in Wuhan, China on 31st December 2019 and is spread by human contact and respiratory droplets like saliva from coughing or sneezing. It is transmitted through droplets created when an infected person coughs or sneezes, or through something that has been contaminated with the virus.
Symptoms include fever, dry cough, tiredness, sore throat, headache, difficulty breathing or shortness of breath, chest pain, diarrhea, aches, loss of taste or smell.
Coronaviruses circulate in a range of animals. Sometimes these viruses can make the jump from animals to humans. This is called a spillover. It could be due to a range of factors such as mutations in the virus or increased contact between human and animals.
Which both COVID-19 and the Black Plague originally received the virus or bacteria from animals.
Symptoms of the Black Plague includes coughing blood, swelling in groin areas, lymph nodes that can develop into large blackish blue lumps, fester and ooze various bodily fluids, fever, pain, chills, sweating, upset stomach, and diarrhea. Having the Black Plague can also lead you to death. It only takes a brief contact with the clothing of someone who was sick to pass the disease on to another.
A number of symptoms ranging from mild to severe. There can be fever and respiratory symptoms such as cough and shortness of breath. In more severe cases, there's been pneumonia, kidney failure, and death.
The Black Death, known as the Pentelis and the Great Mortality, was the most fatal pandemic recorded in human history, resulting in the death of up to 75 to 200 million people in Oceania and North Africa, peaking in Europe from 1346 to 1352.
The coronavirus COVID-19 started on 31st December 2019, and the World Health Organization, scientists, and the CDC are working towards a vaccine to cure and end this pandemic. Even with its mortality rate of 0.28%, there are currently 7.55 million confirmed cases of the coronavirus infected patients and 423,000 deaths worldwide.
As for the Black Plague, the mortality rate for untreated pneumonia plague is 100%. Death occurs within 24 hours. Mortality rates for treated individuals was around 40%.
The Black Death caused inflammation, shortage of products, higher wages because of shortage of workers. Since it was so difficult and dangerous to produce goods through trade and to produce them, the prices of both goods produced locally and imported from far away skyrocketed.
Because of the Black Plague and the deaths, workers became exceedingly scarce, so even peasants felt the effects of the new rise in wages.
The COVID-19 had many effects in trade and the economy too. Just like the Black Death, COVID-19 caused inflation. Many companies had to shut down. Big businesses could no longer hire as many workers due to the virus and lack of customers, since everyone is social distancing. Without a stable job, COVID-19 also increases unemployment.
As the pandemic crisis of COVID-19 deepened, the nations have begun instituting lockdowns. Supply chains have been experienced something completely new, symptomatic demand shock, where people are stocking up on customer stable in order to comply with restriction on movements, in some cases buying months worth of goods in a single day.
Global unemployment is already at 190 million. Although the economic impact has not yet been felt in agriculture, the largest sector in most of developing countries, risks of food insecurity and are now emerging.
For millions of workers, no income means no food, no security, and no future. Millions of businesses around the world are barely breathing. They have no savings or access to credit cards.
1.6 billion in the informal economy have suffered massive damage to their capacity to earn a living as a result of the economic meltdown created by the COVID-19 pandemic. Millions of people are confined to their homes and stock market have been plummeting.
During the time of the Black Plague, the medieval Silk Road had brought a wealth of goods, spices, and new ideas from China and Central Asia to Europe.
In 1346, the trade also likely carried the deadly bubonic plague that killed as many as half of all Europeans within 7 years. It was also known as the Black Death.
The expansion of trade brought many benefits, increasing access to material goods and technology, as well as spreading knowledge.
However, the plague illustrates how increased cross-cultural contacts along denser trade networks increase the potential damage that could be caused by disease.
The coronavirus COVID-19 is a crisis like no other the world has faced in recent decades in terms of its potential economic and social impacts. Professionals estimate that the pandemic could push about 49 million people into extreme poverty in 2020. During COVID-19 pandemic, the difference between rich people and poor people is actually huge. The social structure was affected in several ways. Having many people laid off work and being unemployed caused a drastic difference in the global poverty chart.
A lot of people don't have jobs, so no money is being earned and they don't have a living. COVID-19 is likely to be the cause of the first increase in global poverty. It is causing a disadvantage in learning. Poor people don't have enough money to pay for the food and had to ration their foods.
Is socioeconomic. COVID-19 is disproportionately affecting poor people as well as blacks and Latinos. Overall, these groups tend to have poorer health and less access to healthcare, and they are more likely to live in crowded, unhealthy conditions and to work in jobs that require them to come into close contact with others who may be infected.
To no surprise, during the Black Plague, the poorest neighborhoods tended to have the highest death rates too. The reasons for this are probably similar to the causes of today's disparities, since the poor were already less healthy, lived in dense, unsanitary neighborhoods, and did the city's dirty work.
Additionally, peasants during the Black Plague were having a hard time compared to the rich people. The rich people can get treatments and still have food, while peasants have to work and don't have enough food. Since the disease spread a lot, many people died, which makes work labor become even more valuable.
The plague had an important effect on the relationship between the lords who owned much of the land in Europe and the peasants who worked for the lords.
As people die, it became harder and harder to find people to plow fields, harvest crop, and produce goods and service. Peasants began to demand higher wages and better working conditions.
The Black Plague changed how people believed in Christianity because the church was not able to heal like they said. Many believed it was a punishment from God, or that Jews were the ones spreading it, which was racism. Jews were accused of poisoning wells and food supplies, and pogroms destroyed thousands of communities across Europe. Other European cities blamed prostitutes and ran them out of town when a plague threatened.
Similarly to this COVID-19, some internet trolls are spreading hate and racism towards Asians because the virus originated from Wuhan, China, sending negative messages towards Asians, blaming it on race and countries. Some people rage against China over the COVID-19 pandemic, sweeping the globe and blaming Chinese for eating bats and causing this mass worldwide killing.
Some comparisons in the social structure of both the Black Plague and COVID-19 is that rich people have it better than poorer people. For those who don't really see the struggle, you are part of the socially stable people in the economy. The richer people have sufficient food to lead a healthy life quarantined inside their homes. They have good quality masks, a good comfy place to stay, and still have money. They also close down companies, hotels, and business, but still have the money saved up.
The poor, however, do not have enough food daily while quarantined inside, with unsanitary masks and unemployed from work. The poor live primarily in rural areas. While this could minimize their exposure to the disease, it also means they have limited access to health services. The poor work largely in the agriculture and service sectors and are usually employed by higher enterprises. In addition, many of the vulnerable non-poor who are increasingly employed in the gig economy, particularly in middle-income countries, will also be at risk of slipping into poverty.
Limited access to high-quality and affordable health service can have a devastating impact in the event of an illness in the family, while school closure can lead to a decline in food intake among children of poor families who rely on school feeding programs too.
In the long term, the impacts of lost months of schooling, early childhood interventions, health checkups, and nutrition can be particularly high for children in poor families, adversely affecting their human capital development and earning potential.
While talking about the struggles of social structure of the COVID-19, I will use this medium to spread light to topics people haven't heard of. It is proof that the impacts of this COVID-19 pandemic will remove Yemen from maps all over the world. Yemen, a country in the Middle East, has been racked by civil war for almost 6 years and will go deeper into trouble during this pandemic.
Medicinal practice or precautions of COVID-19 include quarantine and country lockdowns, wearing masks and disinfect hands constantly, using alcohol-based gel and washing hands thoroughly with soap. Social distancing is for people to stay at 1 meter apart.
Face shields are also necessary during talk shows or when going on taking a rest can help. Maintaining a healthy lifestyle and avoid contact between people to prevent spreading of the disease.
Just like how during the Black Plague, people put bricks over the infected person's window and leave them inside to die, separated from other healthy people, quarantining and avoiding infected people. People would only leave their homes when it's important or necessary. People who were rich would move out of the city.
Yeah, they also rubbed onions, herbs, and chopped up snake on boiled or cutting up a pigeon and rubbing on the body.
The most popular theory of how the plague ended is through the implementation of quarantines. The uninfected would typically remain in their homes and only leave when it was necessary, while those who could afford to do so would leave the more densely populated area and live in a greater isolation. Let's all continue to social distance, stay home and stay safe. We will beat this pandemic together.